one of them is a standard on nature verification.
Right, okay. But what, through which
we don't know yet, but we're one of the 3 European. John, Bell, doing some
people online as well.
Yes, I'm just going to start the video and just... Good morning everybody, just wondering if you can hear us in the room correctly. If you could thumbs up or wave or...
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I've been...
Thank you, that's perfect, thank you very much. Welcome.
So is that how you've done it, just like that? And then I'll join the room.
Yeah, that's the best thing, best way to do it, you join the room. And then the volume man, if people are having issues with sound, volume should be coming through that on the screen there. What are we on? 82, that should be.
Access for various civil society organisations.
So they can hear if I'm talking, even though it's facing that way.
That would record, otherwise you can have it facing you if you want, and they can see you. It depends if you want it facing you or want it facing the room to show delegates.
I need the link for this room.
John, scan you in. I'm scanning you.
Where can I get the link for this room?
Where can you get the link for the room?
Yeah.
Here.
Because Zoom, join meeting, meeting ID
865 4487 6124
Right, okay.
and then your password.
Actually, have it, we really
You should need a password.
Yeah.
998831. You'd think I'd know that off by heart now, but I do have to double check.
I think Dell's going to join us, hopefully.
I can hover outside.
Are you joining as well? Because I'm going to ask you to share the screen.
Do the people see us in the room?
Yes, they can either see you in the room or they can see whoever's
okay.
presenting.
Depends where you sit.
That's what I was just wondering.
Absolutely.
What do you want to hide?
Well, that's... Oh,
Depends
you're...
if you need to be seen or want to be seen.
I don't need to be seen.
You see, that's what our delegates are able to see now. So give us a wave.
There we go. So let me just check my sound.
It does need a little bit. You'll have to unmute.
So I have to mute that if
Or-
I'm speaking.
I unmute on one of the laptops, or mute on, and mute on yours and keep unmute on this one here.
So speak to this one.
Yes, because that is feeding through the television.
Okay.
This is my understanding of my very, very basic.
You're doing a grand job.
I mean, if we were here for next week.
We decided on.
Let's just prolong it.
We decided on Monday we'd have it cracked by Friday.
I have.
Could be on Saturday, if we work.
Good.
Busy tomorrow.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay online. I'll put my camera on so you can see me too. Here we go. My name is Tony Allen. I'm Chief Executive of the Age Check certification scheme, and I'm also the host of this this event. I've got the chat open here, so if I need to, if you need to put anything in the chat, then I can see that here as well from those that are online. And thank you for joining. We've got a few people in the room as well. Just to give a little bit of background to this and what we have been doing and what we are planning to do later today. We've been working very closely with BSI, the British Standards Institution, here in the UK on what we're calling the Summit Communique. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment, obviously. But the project funded by Safe Online, part of what they wanted to achieve out of this project and the evidence base they want is a description of the kind of state of age assurance standardisation, what age assurance is and where we're at. And so we are working on that being as a product of this week, being a communique. When I say a product this week, it has been 4 months of back and forth and going through various committees and being out for public consultation from January through to March, and it was released to consultation last Friday morning. Hi Del. It's been up for iterations of consultation. It's been throughout the week. Everybody's had the chance to input to it, to consider it, to make their comments known, and we are. That is still live at the moment. We are going to have a meeting later this morning at 11 o'clock to actually do a finalised document, and that will then produce the communique. So that's been the process of how we've got to where we are. Lots of comments, lots of things. We've been dealing with them as they come in. I would say, first of all, and I will say this afternoon when we hopefully publish it, incredibly grateful for all the comments that have been received, which have been very, very helpful. They've made it, they've gradually made it a stronger and stronger document and referring to things, which is brilliant, and what we want to see happen. The next thing is, before I bring the document up and we run through it, the reason for this session is the what next with it, basically, because we are obviously trying to support through the Safe Online and through the global work. We're trying to support the UN's implementation and member states' implementation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child and a couple of other conventions which we refer to as well. And this is a kind of a statement of where we're at today, and we need to get that on the record. So how do we get that on the record? What record? Where? What might be appropriate? How we might do it? So that's the purpose of what we want to talk about today. So I'm going to ask John here, John Cassin, who is our Senior Certification Officer in the team. He's been the one who's been going through all the comments we've received all week and keeping it up to date and live. And ask him to put it up on screen first of all. And then I'll also ask you, is it still live, or have you taken it down from the live?
Still live.
Still live. So I'll also ask him to put it in the link in the chat as well. You can copy and paste the link into the chat. Then people can view it on their own PC as well. And you can still make comments on it until 11ish. Yeah. I'm going to make an assumption that a lot of people here are going to be roughly familiar with communiques and things that these type of documents. But if I just give generally speaking, a communique starts with a headline of the statement of fact. They're not meant to be campaigning or anything like that. It's just a statement of fact. It then goes on to do what is commonly called recitals, or legal background, or that's where you'll see lots of sentences that start whereas or noting or that sort of thing, that things have happened in the past. It then goes on to talk about the kind of next steps, the call to action, and it will then go on and look at some principles that would be applicable, and then it has sometimes it's called the COP, the Conference of the Parties, or the participants, or the people that have contributed or given not their endorsement or signatory, but the breadth and depth of people that have been involved in the summit and the wider thing. We're not seeking. It's not appropriate, or seeking an endorsement or a signatory type thing. So I'll pause there. Emma.
Just on those, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. So to me, the way it's drafted currently reads more like a kind of UN resolution. So I'm wondering what contexts you're referring to that communique will be produced. Like it seems a little inappropriate, this language, to come out of a conference in this way, because it presents as if it's, it talks about the parties. Who are the parties? It's like it's I would have thought it would be better if you want a written description to draft it more descriptively than this. So I just wondered, when you're talking about a communique having this structure, like what is, like a communique of what, in what other context?
It's an incredibly good question, to which I haven't really got an incredibly good answer. All I will say is that the overall kind of structure is taken from an example of another one that was done for Safe Online about a year or so ago on an entirely different subject, about an entirely different subject matter. So but that was literally just the headings. And then we've gone away and looked at how some of these documents are structured in other things, and kind of followed the same kind of style. It's a very good point, but that's all we've done. So we haven't developed our own sort of bespoke style to it. It's just basically a copy and paste of a similar style and a similar type of document. I think the one that was looked at was right at the very beginning was to do with human trafficking. So there was a similar kind of summit to this that Safe Online ran. I'm fairly certain it was in Brazil, and it was about child labour and trafficking.
But was it maybe hosted with a UN agency or something?
No, it was similar to this. It was a similar sort of thing to what we've got here, and the aim was to get it to within the UN thing. Didn't say all these things obviously, but it was structured in a similar sort of way. There's nothing to say that was right either.
Yeah.
So there isn't like a pro forma that we can get and follow, and but if you think it would land better if it had a different introductory paragraph, then absolutely.
I think so. I think there was a group of us, we gave you some written feedback with some suggestions about rewording that a little bit along those lines. And just the other thing about the names at the end, I don't think it's a good idea to list all of the names unless you make it really clear that it's not an endorsement, that these people were just consulted or something, because it does imply that everyone.
So we have done that, although it's not in the right place, is it? But it's that.
Yeah, the paragraph.
The paragraph at the top there needs to appear below that line, but which we will do.
Can we zoom into that?
Can you read it out?
Yeah.
Because I was just going to pick up on that process point, because a couple of people have been in touch to say, look, we could take our name off. And I don't know when we last sent the full text out to everybody who signed up for the conference. Obviously in the early days we did, but I wonder whether we should, just as a catch-all, before it's finalised, send the final version to everybody who signed up to say, this is the communique we're planning to put on the record, and obviously if you're uncomfortable with having your name, now is the opportunity to take your name off. Because I just worry we're going to be.
We did do that on Monday, but there's no reason why we can't do it again.
I've been a little busy. So
Yeah, no, you're right. We did. We did do that on Monday, but there's no reason why we can't do it again this lunchtime.
I think probably belt and braces in terms of the final version. These sort of things become international incidents if we're not careful.
Yeah, but there's we did have Adele. I think you and Isa had a debate about this, and I mean ultimately we could. I mean the answer to Emma's question is we're not following some sort of pro forma or protocol, so we could take it all off completely. The people that are participating there, but we need to be able to somehow convey the breadth and depth of organisations that have been involved in this summit and everything like that, without conveying that they're in any way endorsing or supporting it. So it's how you do that, really.
I think it might be better if you had an annex saying this is a list of the participants at the conference, but this no way implies they endorse this statement.
So take it out of the statement and put it into an annex.
Yeah.
And just special thanks to for their contributions. It's different than endorsement.
Yes.
But I think you specifically have to still say they haven't endorsed them.
And it's without endorsement.
Yeah. So take it out and put it into an annex. Yeah.
And I think that means you're less likely to have people want to withdraw their name.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on balance, I would think it's probably better to have the longest list possible of people who've been involved, but not try to.
I wasn't trying to seek endorsement because that would be an enormous task.
You never get everybody to agree to everything.
Well, exactly, yeah. But
you need another conference just to agree.
yeah, well, exactly, yeah. And you reach a point like they did with the climate change conference, where they ended up arguing about dots and commas and things like that to the very end of the session.
And so, basically, I represent BSI, and we've got the subcommittee 27 working group 5 meetings over there. And some of the members were just a little bit concerned that some of them haven't been in this migration between the two events. And have they been taken off, or?
So John's been working on that this morning.
Yeah. I'm still going through the list because we filtered out the ISO working group participants, didn't we?
Yeah, so the ISO working group participants have a different type of badge, so we can tell who they all are. But the problem with that is that some of the ISO working group have got other delegates that are also here for other things, so we have to go through it quite manually. So for instance, Google, for instance, as an example, have got a working group 5 delegate, but they've also got 3 delegates, and they've run workshops and stuff here. So,
but in principle, the UK members that are BSI members that are sitting in working group 5, they think it's a great initiative.
Yeah.
They haven't seen it in the detail that they would like to see it in, simply because they have been concentrating on working group 5, but the initiative is there.
Okay. That's good. Obviously, subject to the content, and there's a meeting immediately after this one at 11, which is going to go through the content line by line. So I won't do that now. The purpose of this meeting was to discuss if you bring up point 5 of the call for action. Is really we've put this point 5 in after some. I haven't put it in yet, but we were looking at one of the calls for actions is that the report goes somewhere, and so at the minute we've written it as request who to submit the report to where on the progress made on the implementation of the papers. That's the normal sort of text use. I think that one we probably literally have copied the text from the one that was in the human trafficking one. But we wanted to discuss the who and where question. Emma and one of your colleagues very kindly joined a call the other day. I'm not quite sure we got to the end of that discussion, and that's part of why we were having that here, because there is a whole system of reporting and analysis for the UN conventions. Each member state has to provide a updated report every 5 years or something, and there's a kind of ongoing statements made, sort of diplomatic statements made, and ultimately what we want to do is in somehow, and I'm very much expecting when I say on the record, this is like Annex 96 of a massive pack of stuff that is sent in, so it might be quite well hidden in the being on the record, but it is on the record, so we can then refer to it. Once it's on the record, it becomes a document that we can link to, that we can refer to, that you can use in for instance, recitals in directives. In a European context, you can use it in parliamentary reports, because it's on the record then. But it's how and where and would that process happen? And that's really what we wanted to discuss here. Does anybody online want to jump in and say anything about that? You can just unmute and chat. I think we can hear you, he said confidently. Were you online all able to hear what I was saying? Anybody? Somebody? That's not a good sign, is it?
You must be able to hear you, otherwise you might not have stayed on.
Yeah, I must be able to hear, so there must be nobody's got anything.
No, sorry, I joined late, so I'm just catching up.
You can hear us though, can you, Maj?
Yeah, we can hear you, yeah.
Brilliant, that's all I was just checking. Anybody online want to sort of make any observations, or I'll open it up to the room here really as to where we go with it. What we want. Basically, I'm looking for an answer to those two questions.
Yeah, so Yuta has not joined us in here yet, I think, but she did say that she's visiting from Germany and she's meeting, I think, the secretary to the Committee on the Rights of the Child, or the chair or something, in a couple of weeks' time. So she'd be happy to take a physical copy of whatever we write and pass that across, which is a pretty good way. It's not a very formal way of submitting something, but we are not, as Emma points out, we don't have any standing apart from the fact that it's a group of people who come together, so that seems to be as good an option as any.
Yeah, I'll just on that point. I'll come to you in a second, Emma, but the aim is that Dell, with, I don't know where you're up to this, but the aim is that BSI will be as a national standards body for the UK, will be the owner of this document. So it will have that standing as coming from the national standards body. It was endorsed by the BSI committee that is responsible for this area yesterday. Was it yesterday? I don't know. The days are all blurred into one. Yesterday. So there is a formal thing there, but that is not international.
Again, sorry, I've not been keeping up, but I think that makes things easier. So it's a BSI document.
So it's not an ACCS. It's not a summit document. It will be a BSI document, and it will then. So it effectively comes as from the national standards body of the United Kingdom as the source, and then it's...
Because then I'm perhaps a bit more relaxed about the terminology and the phrasing, because however BSI want to phrase their documents is a matter for BSI, so...
Yeah. Emma, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that is then on the record. So the Committee on the Rights of the Child, even if you give them this for their information, they won't like upload it onto, they don't have kind of a record for things like that. So the committee will make statements about an article of the convention. They wouldn't make a statement about age assurance because their statements are about rights. And so age assurance is a solution, but they would talk about the right and all possible solutions to address any risks to that right, but they wouldn't focus on one solution and what rights that solution might help to promote.
Because I did also think we could share it with the UK's Children's Commissioner, for example, as another option, because I believe that she's consulted whenever the UK submits responses to the UN, so perhaps she would take some of the content into consideration and shaping her views of what she then more formally can say into those international processes.
Yeah, so we discussed with Tony, and Sabina's actually on the line as well somewhere, but I think the UK's next up for reporting to the committee in about 5 years, so you may have another one to send to her by then.
Hopefully 5 more by then.
Yeah. But it wouldn't hurt, right, to give her this, so briefing the people, I think, is probably the best strategy that people need it then.
When we had our call, that's where we were going to go away and see whether we could think of who it is in the UK government that has this responsibility. I think the closest we got was the Foreign and Commonwealth Office likelihood. Do we have a permanent representative? We have an ambassador for the UN, and they have an ambassador's office, don't they? So
yeah, I don't know who those people are. I'm sorry, I'm not.
Well, we found who the ambassador is. Dame something or other. Dame Barbara Woodward is the UK's permanent representative to the United Nations. So we were wondering if that was an option. We could call on the UK's permanent representatives to the United Nations to report this and keep it quite generic.
But they would only maybe read this when they prepared their report as part of the reporting process. So there is no the UK state won't report to the committee apart from their duty every 5 years. They don't do interim reports, and they're probably not looking to report more than they have to. In fact, because it's kind of more responsive than proactive.
Because one of the other points that came up is there's another committee, isn't there, which is the Central one? The BSI, some of the BSI experts felt that it needed to be reported to, what's the committee? Not just the UN Rights of the Child, but there is one that deals with...
the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, Working Group 4 on the electronic commerce.
So there is another convention and committee there that deals with e-commerce, and in that committee they've been talking about age verification, age assurance, and ID and trust services and stuff like that. So it's kind of like there's a bit of a double head there.
I mean, I would say they may well be interested in that case, in this. It's probably worth communicating that to them. I think briefing people is much easier than getting something on a record. I think there is a limit to how many records there are at an international level. I think the BSI is a record that can be quoted internationally then. So
Yeah.
I think those are maybe two different things. You can brief whoever you want to quite widely, but probably the record part of it would be it.
So if we went back to that point 5, John, we put I genuinely think this point 5 was copied straight from the one that was in Brazil, and I think they've requested the ministry responsible for child trafficking to report to the United Nations human trafficking liaison group or something like that, or something like that. That's what it said in the one that we effectively used as a template. But as I say, we're not following a protocol template. We could change that number 5 completely and just provide a briefing to the UK's permanent representatives in the United Nations about the work we've done, and then leave it blank about where the report goes to, and that in itself is that would be a call to action to BSI's government relations team, wouldn't it, to Sahar maybe, to say this is what we're going to provide it as a briefing. That doesn't stop Ian's point basically with Jutta, giving them a copy. You can give a copy to whoever you want. It'll be a publicly available document.
I think that makes sense. I would not be that specific because I'm not sure that person is necessarily the right person. I would maybe put the person responsible, submit a report to the UK government person responsible for the CRC.
Yeah.
Something like that, because I think
it might not be the right department. Oliver.
What would be, according to you, the biggest takeaway from the whole communique? Because you can also make it action-based and very specifically target elements from the communique rather than the whole document itself. So make it more action-based than archive-based.
So I think the headlines at the beginning are probably the key statements that we're sort of trying to note.
So if you would phrase them for us now, like in 2 or 3 sentences.
Yeah. So
what would be the thing that you want people in those kind of bodies to understand or to hear?
So I would say it's the first probably 3 lines.
Okay.
There at the beginning.
And if you think about who would be the recipient for those 3 lines, what would you think?
I think they are policymakers.
Okay.
So people who are developing policy, people who parliamentarians and ministerials, people who are considering the pushback that they might be receiving in consultation and exercise, where some of the pushback is age verification, age estimation can't be done. It's against the First Amendment of the US Constitution, or it's against other things. So it's a potentially an evidence base to assist with that policy. It doesn't determine the policy; that's for them to do. But it's an evidence base that can assist with that.
And then you have your answer.
Yeah, exactly.
So try to get to those people because you might help them formulate better whatever decisions they have to make.
Yeah.
And then you actually might have an influence rather than just having on the record somewhere.
Just before you run away, because I think one of the things we can relatively easily do is get it laid in the House of Commons and House of Lords library. Can't you? Any member can provide something to the library for them. You might know that more than I do.
We could give it to the relevant researcher
Yes.
in the Commons Library team, and then they might potentially put it into some work they do
Yeah.
for others.
So if it's a BSI badge document,
I'm just going to go to the session as
Yeah.
you noticed, but we could also press release it, but I'd be more comfortable press releasing it once we've sent it around to everybody
Yeah.
and just done that final check that we're not going to
Yeah.
get shot.
no, that's fine. Okay, I'll see you in a bit.
Cool. Yeah,
Thanks, Ian. So there are a number of, and we also have like the European Parliament as a library as well, so we can ensure that it gets disseminated to those. And when they're doing briefings for yourselves and other parliamentarians, they use that library of information to assist with their briefing. Yeah.
Hi, sorry I was late. Hello to everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Bianca from Five Rights Foundation. So, just a few ideas following up on the conversation we previously had of how to get this at the international level. First is indeed, like Emma was saying, briefing some of the key, making it a briefing. You can use it everywhere. And there, I would just warn at the international level, if it's a BSI document only, there's limited scope for what you can do with it. But if it is even a neutral document as a reflection of experts, whatever you can do, I think a lot more with it. I would say certainly in addition to the committee, where indeed I think they will be interested to be briefed on it, I don't think it will get that far, maybe it will be referenced somewhere, but the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Children, I think is a very strong voice who would support and reference and use, as I say, maybe not as a BSI document, but as something else. There is a ministerial in Colombia this year in November, I think, on combating violence against children, and you may be able to see about getting it somehow the issue on the agenda and referenced there. And that being a ministerial could go through the British government. It's the Swedish and the WHO and the Violence Against Children Rapporteur who are hosting, so there are different ways in. The Council of Europe is one where they might, I would certainly brief them, but you might be able to get a reference in somewhere. Also, they could go through the UK channel. And I think our view is at the moment one of the most, everything's slow at the international level, but one of the most likely avenues to have concrete work on age assurance at the international will be the OECD.
So it's very helpful that if we can get those in as references in the document as well. So in the what I call the whereas section, that those very useful cross references are there, as well as about those work streams. So if we can work with John on getting those in. The question about the BSI being a BSI document. So we kind of like with some of these things you get what I call logo soup, where there's just like so many logos on it. It's like, what is this? I didn't feel as though it was something which would sit very well as just like this is a summit. So effectively, why is my meeting disconnected? The meeting is still there, it's just disconnected on mine. Are you still on the meeting? Is it?
Mine's still on, because it's still sharing.
I'm having a week where IT is just not being my friend. You're still on. The
site has its value, maybe you can do a separate briefing for something else, because if you don't have the BSI, and in BSI you can take it also to send CENELAC, I think that's really useful. But I'm wondering if you can have something else, maybe based on this, just simply I don't know, another document.
So I don't. We've been working with BSI on this, and so therefore we would like BSI to be able to host it at least. But I'm just, do we make it a wider range? So, for instance, because then this question of what do you put on? Because we definitely can't put anything official on it in the sense of it being anything governmental or United Nations or anything like that, because it hasn't got that status. and it runs the risk of what you were saying, Emma, being considered to be a resolution when it's not a resolution. I don't think, I mean, I'm always happy to put my logo on things, but that's not really that much strength. We could put 5 rights on it. Is what would you put on it then? And if you go for where we, if we would take all the people that have participated and someone put all those logos on there, well, we'd be probably about 100 pages to do that anyway. And it's, what would you do? That's my question really. And it was kind of a little bit neater to do that with BSI, as BSI have helped us and led through the consultation process. But Del, what would your thoughts be on that in terms of the status of BSI globally, with the likes of Sensenelec or with referencing BSI documents globally?
Well, I think just at the moment now we're still in discussions about whether BSI is even going to put its logo on it. So it's still up in the air. There's still conversations happening in BSI just to do with BSI's. We have to be impartial. Obviously, in my relationship with Tony and the committee and seeing the good work here and how it's referenced, I would want BSI to endorse this. However, there is a wider conversation to be had, and if senior management don't understand that conversation, then maybe it's not for now. Maybe it's something for when I get back to London.
Could be.
But yeah, that's interesting. If Sen were to get into that conversation, would it perhaps change the dialogue that I'm having at the moment?
What would you put? What would you put?
I would maybe even, just put it, I mean, you don't need all the logos, but as a declaration or communicate from the Global Age Assurance Summit and literally get signatures. I think that's powerful in itself if you have a good cross-group.
Okay.
But as I say, I mean, I would almost say they're different channels. One is kind of then you have a group of stakeholders, and the other you have BSI who are taking this and taking it forward in their way. It would definitely be a shame to have to choose one or the other.
Okay, that's a fair point, yeah.
I think that also makes sense, but I think then we need more time, right? Because to try and have signatures on the last day of the conference when everyone's just been listening and digesting, like people need to now go through the process of what their conclusions are, I think, after this week. I don't know if you were under time pressure, but if you had...
What I'd like to be able to do is come up with the communique, which I think we can do, because I think we've done all the consultation on it and we can do that bit. We were never expecting at the end of the week that we would have something that we could send somewhere, but we would have the words that were there. I worry about getting signatures to things, because that moves it from being that moves it into more of a not binding's not the right word, but more of a commitment type thing, whereas that might be desirable, but then you're getting into issues with law and stuff like that. And I just, I haven't got a right or wrong answer to the whole thing, to be honest with you. Hopefully we've got a good set of text here, but this is the purpose of this meeting, to think about that.
I was thinking about a 2-step procedure, like we have the communique, which is come out of the whole process we have had during this week and previously also, and then this must be kind of a kick-off for the next step. And then I think signatories would be very good to support the whole thing, but that maybe they also need some time to digest what is in the communique. So, and I would feel that a communique, when it's adopted today, it's strong enough to stand without signatories at the moment, but then there should be a process afterwards for people to come in, and probably this could also be the first version of the communique, and something might come out in 6 months with further developments, and more like Sensenelec or national standardization in organizations will come in. But that needs to,
Emma has briefed us that we've got 5 years to do something. So I think we've got plenty of time.
Well, that's for the UK, right? You can always go through other countries. There's a calendar, and so there are ongoing.
Find which
what's
one's
like
next.
the answer was saying, this is-
Because Five Rights have done a number of jointly badged things like We Protect and others. They tend to be sort of advocacy type things, where the kind of children's charities and that lot come together to do something, rather than necessarily a what's the term, sort of cross viewpoints type thing. Have you done anything?
I mean, so all the work we do is advocacy related. We're taking a position.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just say in cooperation with Five Rights, something could be done. I'm not sure this is quite appropriate, but you could get some kind of document out of a cooperation with, like, the Digital Futures for Children Centre, for example, that could bring together experts, and then indeed get a multinational endorsement, so maybe together with this group or something like that. We are organising an event, I think it's next week, with the European Parliament Child Rights Intergroup on age assurance, and so potentially we could look at getting some of this language. Again, it's not exactly going to be the same thing, but we could get the language like replicated into a report that would be co-signed or endorsed somehow by the intergroup, which represents a very good proportion of members of the European Parliament. So I think there are lots of creative ways.
There are creative ways,
And it's not so easy to get a formal government kind of document, but there are creative ways to have something that in time, but as you say, gains weight so long as you sort of replicate the positions.
Okay. Does it matter that it's not got a logo on it? We've not had a logo on it throughout the whole of the consultation exercise, and it wasn't until here when we put them out here and we put a BSI draft summit on the front. It's always been a plain text document.
I guess if I was just reading it cold, I would want to know who the author was. So I guess if you don't have signatories, then it leaves the question of who has written it.
My computer is this computer's now decided doesn't want to play. Is there anything in the chat or anyone online that wants to? Can you see the chat? We're a small enough room online, so if you want to just unmute yourself and shout out, we can hear you here.
Hi, I'm Maud from Belgium. I just had a session, so I'm very sorry I came in late. So I'm part of the W3C group on accessibility for children, and I just wanted to say that sometimes it's easier to get into the UN discussion via artificial intelligence because they have so many sessions, and that it's a very current topic. So I thought maybe contacting experts on artificial intelligence might be interesting to get the topic and the recommendations in. And I also just shared a link on the W3C initiative on the impact of AI on the web. And I think the discussion on age assurance is important. I am planning to do a response for our group on accessibility for children. And as I said in my session, it's very important in accessibility for children that we differentiate children from adults, because accessibility for the two groups is really, really different. So it's really would also really help. And so I plan to at least introduce the concept, but you can also make an intervention either via GitHub or sending an email to the contact person So if that can help create some visibility at international level as well. And W3C, you have members and non-members collaborating. Well, it's usually the tech industry as well. So yeah, there you have everyone also.
Thank you, Maud. It would be helpful if you could send us any of those contacts to either put them in send them to us directly or send them to John, and we can certainly include that. And I we can certainly include the W3C reference in the recitals as well.
Okay, perfect.
I'll put my email in.
Anyone else online? No? Okay. So I think what I'm hearing from the moment is because we're potentially still playing around, is we basically, at the end of this week, or end of today, we are able to release this text, which is as text, and we can put it on the Global Age Assurance Standards Summit letter-headed paper that you've seen all around the place. And then we go through a process then of liaison, probably using the government liaison team, Sahar, in BSI, with them about, but it's then an open document, so you can all share it, you can use it at the meeting next week, Leander can use it at the meeting as well. We can create it as a PDF, and it can go, into Parliament, it can go wherever you want to put it, basically. I think that inevitably that means that, well, I think we were going to have to do this anyway, but it probably means that we're going to have to put, because you have to put anything you publish, you have to put a publisher statement on it, so it would have to be us as a publisher, as in ACCS as a publisher. But I don't mean, at the bottom, where you have to put, on any public document you put out, you have to put who the publisher is. So we'd probably do that at the end. And then we can talk to BSI about that.
Yeah.
And use it that way.
So what are the timelines from, I know they've been discussed, but what are the timelines, or what do you envisage after today and then going forward? How quickly do you want to get the message out there?
I would say that, so if I think about this within BSI, first of all, the IST 3355 group approved it. That would normally be a go up the chain.
Yes.
Wouldn't it?
And it's a shame that Steve Watkins, so Steve Watkins is the chair of the BSI Cybersecurity Committee, he's not here today. I think from what I've spoken to him about the communique, he's an endorsement of it. So I just think that people at BSI need to be brought on the journey.
Yeah, so, and that's what I mean, it would go up the chain, wouldn't it?
And so like in BSI internally, and also within the committees as well.
Yeah.
So it can, both of those two meet together and have that conversation. It just people haven't been brought on the journey. Not even Sahar doesn't know about the communique.
So I think that will be my view, that after this, this is our text of the outcome of what we've been discussing this week and in the lead up to this. I would then, from using the IST 3355's approval on it, that effectively should go up the chain.
To Alan, and then from
Alan
to Steve.
and then eventually it'll get to Scott, and they'll decide there. That's the official route.
Because right now I'm having conversations about wording, legal departments about how are we going to word this, and I think it's a little bit too quick. It's a little bit too quick for BSI. You know the speed at which we work at.
5 years is a bit too quick for BSI, so let's not worry about that. But I'll say yes. I think we now have a text, don't we? So we can now go through the process, the chain process. And that's really my point about what's next. We can go through the chain process, because we've got a text. So, and then, but then in the meantime, there's nothing to stop anybody else using that text as well.
I don't think I just don't think I personally have brought people on the journey.
Okay.
So, however, I do like what I have read. I have been in contact with this more than my other colleagues, and so I realise how it's landing with them and the sort of confusion and how it's all going down.
One of the issues we have is that it hasn't got a long reference number. That'll confuse BSI. We should have put some letters at the beginning of it and given it a long reference number, and then everybody's happy then.
Yeah.
The BSI Scrabble.
I think there's I am thinking about a plan about how we can get this across. I do think we can eventually get it out, but we can work on those timelines. We can have a discussion about that.
Okay.
What it looks like.
So that's been really helpful, I think. Thank you very much. We are going to go through it at 11 o'clock. We're going to go through it line by line. So if you want to come in for that, then you're very, very welcome. But I think at that point we will be back in this room for those online, and we'll go through it line by line here. But at that point, I'll call this meeting to a close and go and grab a tea or coffee before we tackle it. Anybody's more than welcome to come and join us for that. Thank you, everybody. I have to put this on mute now, don't I?
Yeah, just mute the video on the